In World War II, survival often hinged on what a soldier could carry unnoticed and use without revealing position. Fire was essential for warmth, boiling water, drying clothes, and maintaining morale. Yet an open flame could mean death. Issued stoves were bulky, noisy, and often unavailable on patrol. In response, soldiers across multiple theatres adopted an improvised solution so small it could disappear into a pocket: a compact stove built from a discarded tin lid. This was not a novelty. It was a field-expedient tool shaped by necessity, refined by repetition, and passed quietly from unit to unit. The pocket stove did not replace standard equipment. It filled the dangerous gap between having fire and being seen using it. So, you see, combat conditions really forced soldiers to rethink fire entirely. The constant movement on the front lines made traditional cooking fires, well, pretty much impractical. Columns of smoke would attract enemy artillery, and even the smallest sparks could reveal night positions. Fuel shortages were so severe that, believe it or not, even matches had to be rationed. Soldiers needed a flame that was low, shielded, fuel-efficient, and could be put out quickly. The tin-lid stove, well, it managed to answer all four of those demands. Tin lids from ration cans, tobacco tins, or even medical supplies were just everywhere. They were thin enough to shape with, basic tools, but still strong enough to hold heat. More importantly, they could be converted without specialized equipment, which made the method universally accessible. The construction began with a shallow tin lid, roughly the size of a palm. Soldiers punched small ventilation holes near the rim using a nail, bayonet tip, or cartridge. These holes controlled airflow, allowing the stove to burn hot without flaring. The center of the lid held the fuel bed. Now, fuel really varied depending on the theatre of war. Soldiers used whatever they could find: cotton from bandages soaked in grease, paraffin scraped off old candles, boot polish, animal fat, or even crushed-up solid fuel tablets, all packed tightly into the lid. The main idea was slow combustion, not a tall flame. After packing it in, they'd level off the surface to keep the whole thing from tipping over. Some soldiers, would fold a thin strip of metal around the rim, making a makeshift wind guard. Others got clever and nested the stove inside a second lid, adding a bit of insulation. There were plenty of variations, but the core principle stayed the same: a shallow container, controlled airflow, and slow-burning fuel. Unlike a campfire, this little tin-lid stove, once you got it going properly, produced hardly any smoke. The flame stayed low and tight, often so subtle you could barely see it from more than a few feet away. At night, soldiers would, cup it between their knees or sometimes inside a helmet to mask the light. The heat was concentrated upward, which made it just perfect for warming a mess tin or boiling a small amount of water. Because the fuel was semi-solid, the stove could be snuffed instantly by simply covering it. No embers remained and no glow lingered. This really mattered in environments where, just a few seconds could determine survival. Boiling water was the primary task, especially when chemical tablets were, unavailable or unreliable. A single stove load could bring about half a cup of water to boil, which was enough for disinfecting canteens or preparing rations. Soldiers also used it to heat shaving water, thaw out frozen hands, and, dry their socks in enclosed spaces without any smoke build-up. In winter campaigns, the stove became a morale tool. Just a few minutes of warmth during a halt could prevent cold injury and maintain dexterity. Veterans often recalled the psychological lift of controlled heat in environments defined by discomfort. This method remains relevant in any scenario where stealth, minimal resources, and fuel efficiency matter, even now. A modern equivalent can be built from, an aluminum bottle cap, a small tin lid, or even a shallow metal container. Cotton cloth or a paper towel soaked in cooking oil functions effectively as fuel. Vent holes, they must be small and evenly spaced to prevent flare-ups. The stove should always be tested outdoors first. Airflow determines success, really. Too many holes cause rapid burn and a visible flame, while too few suffocate combustion. Mastery comes from repetition, just as it did for World War II soldiers. In disaster scenarios, this stove allows water sterilization without drawing attention. In wilderness travel, it serves as a backup when modern stoves fail. Its strength lies in independence from proprietary fuel. After the war, doctrine shifted to favor standardized equipment and reliable supply chains. Improvised methods, they were discouraged in favor of regulation gear. As materials improved over time, the need for improvisation just sort of faded away. The old tin-lid stove became a mere footnote rather than a lesson to be remembered. But, history shows us that supply chains can break down a lot faster than skills disappear. When those systems fail, simple methods, they come right back into relevance, and often immediately. The tin-lid stove, really, it's more than just an object. It reflects a mindset. It shows how soldiers could adapt ordinary materials into life-preserving tools simply through observation and discipline. And it reminds us honestly that the most effective survival knowledge is quiet, repeatable, and transferable. Preserving these lessons, it truly does matter. If you value serious historical insight and practical wartime knowledge, do consider supporting the work here. Subscribe to Echoes of Valor, share this guide with your fellow history and survival enthusiasts, and help keep these forgotten skills alive for those who might one day need them again.